However, the board is pleased to report that as of January 1st, 2012, 42 of its 44 positions are filled. We have 2 vacancies remaining. Interviews have been conducted, and the board is awaiting the required approvals to extend a formal job offer. In the area of technology, the board concurs with the staff recommendation and plans to webcast future meetings when possible. The board's last meeting on February 29th, March 1st of 2012 was webcasted. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about these issues today, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions by members of the committee, staff?
On your first issue that we were dealing with in the implementation of the new licensing category, you said the staffing that was to be provided was 12
Yes.
positions, and you ended up with 5 that were approved.
That's correct. Through the budget process of about 2 years ago, we had a BCP in for 12 positions.
So to finance.
And finance approved it, but during the hearing process here, it was reduced to 5.
Oh, it was reduced here.
Not in this committee, but yes, during the subcommittee hearings, yes.
Right. When we, for the licensing fees that were to be provided, I mean, you would have had sufficient funds to cover those positions.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. And have you resubmitted a new BCP? Or
we're working on it now, yes.
And to go back up to the...
We're working on it.
Level of 12, okay.
We're hopeful.
Any further comments you'd like to make?
No.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. Now we'll open it up to professional groups, organizations, and individuals to come up and testify.
Mr. Chairman, members, very briefly, Tim Shannon, representing the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. We're here to support the continuation of the board. We like to note we're very happy that they're almost up to full staffing finally after June 2010 when they were down at their lowest spot, and we look forward to working with them on the development of their continuing education standards and the process that involves that. Thank you.
My name is Dean Porter. I'm the Executive Director of the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors. In our first year, we have 850 members, and with thanks to Senator Weiland for authoring the LPCC licensing bill, and with thanks to members of the committee for supporting it when it came to the Senate floor back in 2009, the first LPCC licenses are being awarded this year, as you've just heard. While staffing shortages at the BBS have meant that it's taken much longer than anticipated to implement this new licensing program, we're very appreciative of the efforts of the existing dedicated staff members at the BBS who have increased their workload in order to begin the LPCC program. As more licenses are awarded over the coming months, newly licensed LPCCs will begin to address the mental health workforce shortages in California. We support the continuance of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Gonzalez. I am the Director of Government Relations for the National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. We are also supportive of the board, and I think they've done a remarkable job with limited resources over the last couple of years, and just want to support them today.
Thank you. Dr. Snyder, do you want to come up to the table, both of you? Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. First, it's an honor to be here in front of you today. My name is David Cherbig. First, I want to especially say that to Senator, the Cloud that I'm a big fan, and thanks for supporting the elder abuse bill. As a practitioner, I see more cases of elder abuse, and it's sad, and it's also disturbing as far as society is changing. Now, I'm here today alone. I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist since 1982, and I brought my license. And what's really nice about this is it reminds me that just a couple weeks ago, I've held it for 30 years, and I'm very proud of it. And I really enjoy my practice, and clients seem to feel good about my work, and I truly am feeling good at this stage and age of being a professional licensed marriage and family therapist. When I first came to Sacramento, I just want to really briefly point this out. I want to give a little bit of my background to give support to what I feel is a unique qualification for me to talk to you about some serious issues. And so in order to do that, I just want to briefly go over what my background and qualifications are, if you don't mind. In 1986, I came to Sacramento. I was very privileged to be the clinical director of Eligod Mental Health Center downtown Sacramento. Very honored to work with a renowned black psychiatrist, Dr. Harry Harper. He was committed to community mental health at that time. We had really good community mental health, and it was a wonderful time to be part of that outreach and that care. I went on for 14 years, actually, to be with Dr. Harper in private practice, and also in his development of a conditional release program for the not guilty by reason of insanity folks who were holed up in hospitals at the cost of taxpayers of $104,000 a year. We were able to get them into community centers and have the taxpayer bill go down to $24,000, and that was pretty amazing work. I felt very proud of that. Earlier in my career, I was able to be a part of providing California with a pilot project for the early identification of children with social and emotional challenges, and that went on to become, I'm very proud of this, educational law in the state of California. That law is under the 2009 California Welfare and Institution Code 4343, and it's the primary intervention program. Finally, I received my master's from the University of San Francisco. Another reason why I feel I'm qualified to make the statements I'm about to make is that I have a master's degree in public administration health services. So I do know something about public health service administration and the fiscal obligations and service providing that go with that on a graduate level. So I'm here today to talk about some important and serious matters that I really would like a part of the record. And before I do that, I have to say, in full disclosure, my license is under probation by the board, and it's important for them to say yay or nay to my continued testimony, because there could be construed as subverting or sabotaging their power to discipline me, and that is not why I'm here. So if there's any comment by them at this time, I'd like to, allow them to have that time to do that.
We'll just leave us two board members just so he can say what he needs to say.
They're aiming to leave, so yeah.
Is your case still ongoing, or has the board already made a decision regarding your case?
I'm almost through probation, and I expect to be off of probation.
What I'm asking is, in the disciplinary process,
Yes.
you've been to a hearing.
Yes.
It's been concluded.
Yes.
It's gone back for the board to a decision.
Yes.
And so
And
you're on probation.
Correct.
Okay. But there isn't any other further case that's being pursued right now regarding your
No,
license.
but I did get a complaint letter last week along the same lines.
Just so you know, we cannot hear that information
Okay.
in regard to any ongoing case
Okay.
with the board. But
Okay.
if your case has already been decided by the board and that you've been put on probation,
Yes.
we could hear that.
Okay. So I can go on? Thank you. Thank you. I believe it's the present administration's board has strayed from its vision, its mission, and its goals. I believe the board has lost its direction and is meddling too deeply into practitioners' business and the business of supplying services to very needy people. There are three reasons I'm giving today that I would hope that you would consider in your review with this board. I believe the board needs to be sunsetted. I believe that that this board could all of the activities of this board could be folded into another board, perhaps a board of psychology, and that would save the taxpayer a lot of money and would, I think, correct these serious deficiencies in keeping my license viable in the public. So the first thing is, I've worked for the board in two past administrations. In 1987, I was an orals commissioner. And back then, the board was called the Board of Behavioral Science Examiners. And we were very proud as young professionals to be orals commissioners. We met at a local high school close to here, Hiram Johnson. We saw hundreds of applicants. We saw them face to face. And we were able to determine whether they were competent, not just in what paper they produced, but whether they could really provide the tools necessary to help heal people. The board has gone on to change its name and do away with the orals. And I just would like to read to that fact that from a past review by this commission, it states that during the review of the Board of Psychology, which occurred prior to BBS's review, I believe this is 1998 review, the chair of the committee stated that he supported the continuation of the orals examination for psychologists, and he believed an orals examination was essential because communication skills are so important to the practice of psychology and psychotherapy. The chair went on to say that the Board of Psychology chair agreed, stating that the communication skills are an essential tool of the trade. So for number one, under examination, the board constructs written examinations for all of its licenses, and it says it ensures individuals holding license pass examination testing for competency. I believe these exams are defective. I believe they're void of face-to-face interviews, and I know how serious that charge is, but I also know after practicing psychotherapy for 30 years, it's important to be good with people. The second one is statutes and regulations. I am alarmed of the power play of the chairman, the executive officer. There seems to be a willingness by this board to assume powers which they certainly should not have, and they use them in, I think, deceptive and dangerous ways. And while that's a very serious charge, I can go ahead and read that my professional association actually has made the same allegations in the past. So 3 days ago, this very executive officer has proposed new powers be effectively discharged to her, which would take the judiciary out of the compliance process. And it is only you, the legislative branch, to balance this board's power grab. And it's only you, the legislative branch, that could bring to mind with this present board administration that they have to comply with the administrative laws, that the judiciary needs to be there. And in fact, if I can read from their manual, there needs to be a separation of functions. An administrative adjudication Bill of Rights states requires that the adjudicative function of any agency be separated by investigative, prosecutorial, and advocacy functions within the agency. And this means that the commission, board, or person charged with rendering the ultimate agency decision in the case cannot have served as an investigator, prosecutor, or advocate during the pre-hearing or hearing phases of the case. The law also provides that the decision maker may not be subject to authority, direction, or discretion of investigator. So I think it needs to be looked at. I'm not sure that that what even all of my statements today are going to mean that this board's going to be disbanded. But I really believe that one of the reasons that I'm here is that you might review the board a little more closely for these issues and other issues.
All right. Thank you.
Are you talking about Kim Manson?
Yes.
Okay. Curious. Thank you. Okay. As I said before, I'm a psychologist and I'm a marriage and family therapist. And to tell you the truth, I'm more
Please
proud.
state your name again.
It's Faye Snyder. I'm actually more proud of being a marriage and family therapist than I am of being a psychologist, because I think MFTs have better theory. They're closer to the family and the issues of child abuse and the current issues of the day. I've never met that man, but I have knowledge of other MFTs who have been tyrannically treated, capriciously treated by the enforcement officers and the standard of care evaluators, and that there are. I sent you ahead 2 cases that I know of that were dismissed, but prosecuted based on nothing that's in the law. It was almost like the standard of care evaluator made the law up. One case was well, I don't know if you want me to go into cases, but just briefly, one case was a woman who was treating a borderline client. Borderline personalities are prone to rage and revenge, and so this client went to try to get revenge, contacted the board, and the board put her through. She lost her house. She lost her retirement. She defended herself, and the board played right into the pathology of this client. And the evaluator did not have the ability to assess the difference between a retributive client versus a client that had a real bona fide issue. Then that very same evaluator, in another case, the therapist was acting as a private party, learned some information, made a child abuse report as a private party. The person she made the child abuse report against was a very wealthy person and who had a history of more than 184 lawsuits and had stalked a child, assaulted a child, and yet this therapist was put on the defensive and told that she shouldn't have made the child abuse report, that she had other options, and that when she made the child abuse report, they speculated that she misused her power, and so on and so forth. So it's not within the realm of anything I've ever been taught. There are some people at the top, and the materials that I gave you name the names of the standard of care evaluator, who is the same person. So in other words, here's my recommendations. That I think all standard of care evaluators and all enforcement officers need to pass a rigorous test on law and ethics. They need to know their law and ethics, especially because it appears that the Department of Justice, who handles anywhere from manicurists to MDs, they don't know the specific law for every board. And so it turns out that they look to the standard of care evaluators to get their definition of the law. So the standard of care evaluators must know rigorously the law that governs the practice of psychotherapy, and as well as child abuse reporting law. They also need to pass a test of vignettes where they would be tested to see if they could assess the difference between a retributive client or a client who has a personality. I just know so many other cases that are flashing before me where you're dealing with a sociopath or a rageaholic. I don't want to use too many diagnoses, but the different types of personalities that are prone to make complaints, to get revenge on a therapist who tried to act within the law. So we need a way of assessing the difference between a dangerous client and a person with a real bona fide complaint. I think that they need to have a serious background in clinical practice, so they would have experienced that substantial difference. And I think they also need to know how to assess another theory and practice. Like a behavioralist can't assess, or this particular standard of care evaluator was unable to assess a type of therapy that was different than her own. And so if you're assessing a therapist, you need to do research and find out about their particular type of practice. In this one case, she was an analyst, and analysts always take notes about how they feel when they work with this person, because it reveals to them, how other people feel when other people relate to this person. Well, this standard of care evaluator took those notes, those process notes, and interpreted that this woman was biased against her own client. She didn't understand that an analytic approach to a particular client was, you're supposed to stay conscious, you're supposed to stay aware of your own reactions so that you don't react on the triggers that they try to push when they're very explosive clients. Those are the main things. I think if this, I really would like to see this particular standard of care evaluator removed. I think she's really, really dangerous. I was dying to ask this man if his standard of care evaluator was this person, because I just have heard so many cases. This woman is out of control. So if you do decide to continue the Board of Behavioral Sciences, which I generally speaking hope you do, I would not have a problem at all with merging boards either, for expediency and to save money. But please consider that there is a problem with power and abuse of a psychotherapist by the Board of Behavioral Sciences that's going on right now. Please make a caveat in your funding to protect the good guys who are really, really working with very dangerous populations, and we can't work with those populations if those people can use our board against us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there someone here from the board who could come forward? For the board? For the board?
No, for you. For you.
For me?
No, for you. Mr. Gage, what happens if a board is sunsetted? What happens to the duties that they're supposed to do as far as consumer safety?
Right now, with the changes in the sunset law, the program goes away completely, so that you can no longer license anybody if the board sunsets.
So then that's not feasible at all.
No,
because
we're hopefully going to fix that this year.
Okay.
The governor was not happy when he sunsetted the Board of Nursing. I don't think they realized that, once you did that,
Okay.
you could no longer license any nurses, and nor could you discipline anybody in terms of.
Okay, so then whatever purpose a board was put in, and the number one being consumer protection, would then cease to exist.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
Second question. The enforcers, or whatever they're called, evaluators, whatever, that go out, they kept talking about judiciary. Are they licensed lawyers?
No, not the
No.
way. That's the question
Yeah.
I was going to have the
Yeah.
senator ask was, what is, I don't know what these staff or how they're chosen.
Yeah, because
Yeah, could you address that issue of the standard of care evaluators and how they're chosen, and gives a brief indication of that?
I'll give you a brief overview of our enforcement process. Essentially, when a complaint comes to our office, one of the very first things that we do is we evaluate it to see if it potentially violates our existing laws. Once that happens, it's assigned to an investigative analyst within our board. That individual gathers the pertinent records, information from individuals. One of the very first pieces of information that we absolutely have to move forward is a release of patient records from the complainant. Once we obtain that, then we're able to contact the licensee in question and request various documents from there. That comes into our office. That analyst, who is a civil servant, reviews that information, and if we can see that there's a violation of law, the information is then sent to a subject matter expert who is a licensee, and the licensee reviews for violations in standard of care and ethics. That individual then renders the decision to us, and if there is sufficient evidence to move forward, we determine the type of disciplinary action that would be appropriate. Currently, we have two options available to us. We have a citation and fine program. We also have the ability to refer the matter to the Attorney General for disciplinary action. So that in a nutshell, is our process, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so it's much like what some professions do in terms of what we call peer review, where there's a two-sided issue where a practitioner as well as someone from your board evaluates the material presented, and a determination is made at that point. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
It's like peer review.
It also undergoes further review at the Attorney General's office in terms of the.
There's a violation that you
Yes, they want to make sure that
if not, then
We don't.
it's just dismissed or whatever.
Correct. That's correct.
okay, so they're not lawyers. They're people that are probably very well versed in whatever they're policing.
Right. Well, they're civil servants, through the civil servant process, and
But one of the individuals I thought you said was a member of that profession.
that's correct. The subject matter expert is a licensee. Can be a licensed marriage and family therapist. It could be a licensed clinical social worker, educational psychologist. But they actually review and they take into account what is the standard of care in the profession at that particular time.
Well, one of the people that spoke were talking about those people that review may not be necessarily a disciple of whatever school of thought, and so they may not understand him. And that's what I gathered from the speaker, that that you may be biased in one school of thought or one discipline, and not knowledgeable about everything. I don't know.
I would not concur with the previous speaker's statement. Our role initially is just to be an impartial fact finder. That's it. We have no bias one way or the other. However, because consumer protection is our mandate, if there is a violation of law, we are obligated to move forward, and we will.
Okay. And another statement was that, having done this somewhere else, people that file complaints, anybody can file a complaint. Whether or not they have validity is another issue, because anybody can file a complaint, and then certain processes then go into effect, and it could ruin a reputation. At what point does a habitual complaint a person that files complaints, at what position does somebody say, okay, it's just like people that call our office. After a while, you go, okay, here's so and so calling again. We already know what they want.
We operate in the same.
Okay.
Which
is not to say that people can't call, but after like 150 times, you understand that person loves to call you.
Exactly.
All right. Any further questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes our informational hearing. So this committee is adjourned. Thank you.